And welcome back to the Shuffle Squads channel, where we're going to provide for you another elitist meta forecast here on the YouTube channel. That way you know where to find the best decks and how to play them, what ways to play them, and gear up for the Indianapolis Regional Championship coming up this weekend. We want to make sure that all of your Twitter takes are in the correct place, and we're going to talk about all of the decks going forward into this meta, and hopefully you can pick the deck that's either best for you for the Indy Regionals or one of the Challenges Cups, so you can get those championship points. That way you may or may not go to Worlds. But regardless of that, we're going to be talking to all of the awesome casts that we have here for this meta forecast and going down the line here. So joining us on this meta forecast, we do have Lyric. Lyric, tell the people who you are and where they know you from.
Hi, you may know me from a ton of places on the internet. It's really funny because I really wanted to be on this meta forecast because we didn't have Hartford regionals this year, but Indianapolis, I guess, is going to take place of Hartford, which makes it one whole year of me actually going to big Pokemon tournaments. I came from the Smash community. Now I'm mostly here in Pokemon. I actually have not been too active in Smash, but I stream every day, Monday through Friday, 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. playing Pokemon and making some content and part of the Shuffle Squad and doing casting stuff. I do a lot. But yeah, that's me, and I'm super happy to be back.
Awesome. Love to have you here, Lyric. And Editor-in-Chief Dom. Dom is here with us on this meta forecast. Dom, where should the people know you from? Who are you?
Like PJ said, I'm Dom. You might know me. I'm just on a lot of the Shuffle Squad YouTube videos. I edit a lot of them, so when you guys are giving me trouble for missing stuff, you got a face to the name. You guys might know me also from Twitter. I religiously liked Rapid Strike for a little bit, and then now I religiously enjoy Raging Bolt. I played Lost Zone Raging Bolt to Orlando, and I made day 2 with it, so yeah. Besides that, I haven't done a lot in Pokemon, but
But
we're here.
Dom's traveling along with us for the ride anyway, and competing in a lot more events. So give it up for Dom too for joining us here. And last but absolutely not least, we have Alex joining us for this meta forecast. Alex, who are you, and where should the people know you from?
Yeah, I'm Alex Schemanske. Probably you know me from United Wings or UIC, probably in that order. But I've just been playing for most of my life with a lot of success over the years. I'm just kind of the Twitter take neutral guy at this point, though.
That's right.
So
That's
we'll
right.
see.
We love that about you, Alex. So as far as that goes, we're going to be getting into all of these decks. You're going to want to learn and stick around, and as we go through and talk about these decks. First thing that I want to cover, and we'll hop over to you, Dom, first, and I want to get your take because you've been playing a little bit of this deck too. You like the ancient Pokemon. We're going to be talking about the moon decks on the rise. So there are two different schools of thought for how Roaring Moon or the Baby Moon should be played. We do have the ancient box. We have the double moon deck with the Dunsparce. Both of these decks seem to be increasing, and I did watch your latest tier video. Believe it or not, I do watch some of the Shuffle Squad videos, and I did see that you put both of those in the A tier recently. So talk to me a little bit about that and what your thoughts are on the deck.
Yeah, so in terms of, like, I'll start with just Ancient Box. I feel like the deck is pretty well positioned, right? You've got beefy, like, you can get 200 HP, like, single prize Pokemon, which can be really pesky. They're really solid into a lot of the top decks. Like, stuff like Chen-Pao having to discard 4 energy to take 1 prize is super, super inefficient. And Ancient Box has just got a lot of utilities, right? Like, you can swing really high numbers. You can swing really easily, like, it's a Seta and an attach away from potentially swinging, like, 150 damage on, like, turn 1. Which is pretty strong, right? Like, most decks aren't able to do that. And then in terms of Moonsparce, right, you've just got a lot of consistency with the Dunsparce. You can swing really, really high HP Pokemon like Charizard with your big Roaring Moon. You can use Little Roaring Moon for 1 prizer matchups. Both take a pretty solid, like, Lost Zone Box matchup. Ancient Box destroys Lost Tina, which is on the rise with the rise of Charizard. And both do take a pretty good C-Pal matchup. So I think in general, like, your Charizard matchup's a little sketchy as regular Ancient Box, but Moonsparce, it's probably about as 50-50 as a matchup can get, in my testing at least, and from what we've seen locally. So I think that they're just really well positioned. I think they're pretty easy to pick up, and, like, for that reason, I just feel the decks are really solid, and if you're going to be playing them, now is probably that time that you want to.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's a good time to pick them up. Both decks are relatively cheap now too. So any budget player that's going to be going to these regionals, I think that it's a great time to start investing some time this next week or next few days in at least testing it if you haven't already going into this event. So we'll hop over to Lyric. Lyric, your take. We've already talked a little bit in depth about how the decks are working in the meta right now, but which one would you personally take? I'm sure you've seen some at locals. You had a decent local run recently, and then you've been playing online ladder. So out of the two decks, which one do you feel is stronger?
Personally, just off of the way I like to play the game, because I think every player has a different play style. I like Moon Sparse a little bit more, just because of the consistency of being able to, one, not only technically not deck out unless you're up against that pesky Chi-Yu player, but I also like having the Roaring Moon EX in there at kind of any time. There's nothing more powerful to me than benching a Pokemon and then just being able to wipe something off the board as fast as possible. Right. That can be possible with things like Sada's Vitality, a Dark Patch thrown in there. But I think when it comes to Ancient Box, Roaring Moon itself, I agree with Tom. It's incredibly well positioned. I think single prizer attackers going into kind of what will be one of the last tournaments of this, not Paradox Rift, Temporal Forces meta, before we kind of go on over to Twilight Masquerade. I just think well positioned, but deck fires, and that's all that you can really ask for sometimes.
That's exactly right. And now moving over to you, Alex, I want to get your thoughts on the builds of these decks. And we saw recently we had Vinny Fernandez piloting, at EUIC, and then there was the Sao Paulo regional. There were the Ancient Box decks. There was some that played Cobalion. There was some that played the extra Great Tusk for potential mill and that extra push towards the ancient Pokemon in the discard pile. I know that your testing group was kind of on a build that had obviously the higher counts of the Fluttermanes in there over the Koraidons. So there's a lot of different builds on the Ancient Box side. And we've also seen a couple of different sprinklings inside of the Moon deck with the Dunsparce, where we see the Iron Leaves come in for that heavier, Charizard counter, things like that. So what are your thoughts on the different builds, and what would you necessarily tech or not tech for those decks?
I think all the builds are honestly pretty well positioned. Dunsparce probably has the most consistency. And genuinely, I think it's probably the better of the decks. Ancient Box is obviously good. It'll do well. And I don't know. I think just like straight Moon probably was a little overcooked on that one. But I think there's a lot of potential for Fluttermane itself to be very good in this format. Like we saw Tyler Matthews definitely cook too long with Fluttermane, whatever it was, Devolve nonsense. Like he did well enough with that. So there's clearly like a spot in the meta for Fluttermane itself to be very good. Whether that is an Ancient Box or even just like Gardevoir, doesn't really matter. But I think tech-wise, you can't really play the Iron Leaves. It ruins your consistency too much, especially in like the only Darks version. You don't really have the space for that. In Koraidon, you also really shouldn't have the base space for it. I mean, you could, but it's not worth it. Cabalion's fine. Probably better in like something like I played with 27 ancient cards.
Right.
If you're not playing enough for it to even get close to Charizard, like, it's not worth it. Because realistically, you're cutting an ancient card for it.
Yeah.
And if you start it, you're just kind of losing that game probably.
Yeah, I noticed that, even in a best of one format, there's too many games where you kind of start Cobalion and then you're just stuck for a couple turns. So it's definitely better. I would suggest a Cobalion in a best of three format. So we're going to kind of move on. I do think that those are super strong decks into this meta. So if you are considering playing those, definitely continue to play those and know your matchups a little bit more. But we're going to talk about a deck that we haven't talked about on these meta forecasts in too long, until as of recent, we saw a little bit of a top cut with one of them. And I think that it has a little bit more legs to stand on than I originally thought in this format. So we're going to be talking about Goldengo EX. And I'll kick it back off with Lyric, because Lyric's got a little experience behind this.
Little? Oh my god, just a little? Okay, well, I think the story of me and Goldengo EX goes all the way back to Charlotte, and I cannot take credit for this story because it's actually thanks to two of the Shuffle Squad members, and that would be Jarek and Jeremy Camilla. Long story short, Miraidon was not Miraidon-ing, and I was really sick and tired of it. And I was really tired of Path, and I had just watched them constantly discard Path, and I was like, man, like, I would love a deck that would just allow for me to keep drawing cards, and that's where Goldengo came in. And I've been playing Goldengo pretty consistently ever since. I took it to Knoxville, was maybe a week on the deck, and like a couple days before that, I had won my first challenge with it. Then I won another challenge with it, and then on Sunday, I top cutted my first cup with it. And it's just a deck that consistently does draw cards, and I think I really just enjoy kind of the freedom of it. If you come out to my streams, I have been working on this like lyrics perfect 60 Goldengo list for like the past like month and a half, and it plays a ton of tech cards and it's a ton of fun. I think a lot of the times people, they see Palkia and they're like, all right, well, Palkia, Greninja, Moonlight Shuriken, but Palkia is still a very good attacker, hitting for 260, and most of the time now we are seeing full benches, and 260 is a big number. Goldengo, we see in the city leagues over in Japan is also, winning, top 8ing, top 16ing. I think the deck is, it does have a horrible control matchup, in my opinion. It does not beat Zard. I can add in 500 tech cards. Won't be able to beat Zard. A good Zard player is always going to play around Radiant Charizard. And, when Goldengo takes one knockout with Max Belt, that is just instant blow up. I don't think it does like super well into the current meta, but if you play the deck a lot, shout outs to you. And I'll see you in Indy at the bottom tables. So that's how I feel about Goldengo. But, I love that deck. So I'm always going to play it.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's definitely a fan favorite for sure. But I think that with the meta shifting and evolving a little bit, Dom can kind of go in on this a little bit more alongside Alex here. But we're going to talk about how this could play into the decks that are trying to beat Charizard, because I think that that's kind of where our focus is going to be. There are going to be a lot of players trying to either A, play Charizard, or B, beat Charizard. So I think that with a rogue deck like this that we haven't seen in a while, maybe it's got some more legs to stand on and how that matchup's going to work into the rest of the meta. So Dom, we'll start with you first and talk about what matchups Goldengo has that are good matchups in this meta.
So yeah, I'd like to start and go on record and say that if you go back to our first post-rotation tier list, I said Goldengo was tier 1. I said I thought bro was about to be a top 5 deck in format. Yeah, I was absolutely wrong. That take alone, I should have been immediately booted. It is quite a horrible take. Yeah, like Goldengo's it's one of those decks that, especially with Path gone, right? Like you've got a lot of consistency. You're drawing a lot of cards. I don't find it has many like amazing matchups per se. I think your Chen-Pao matchup is pretty good. Initially Charizard felt okay, but the more I've tested it, the more I'm like, yeah, Charizard does not feel so okay anymore. Charizard used to feel like pretty good, I think, until they started playing more Turos, because I think Palkia was pretty good in that matchup early game. I think Greninja was pretty strong, but I think now they just play around it too much. I'm not really sure how like your Lost Box matchup is. I haven't tested enough Goldengo to really say, yeah, I think it's perfect 63 to 37 or whatever, right? But like I feel like your Lost Box matchup isn't the worst. Decks that play fire types like Radiant Charizard probably aren't amazing. But yeah, I feel like it's definitely got its legs, right? Like being able to swing with Palkia. I'm a big Palkia guy. I always have been. On my personal YouTube, I've made Palkia videos. I love talking about Palkia. I think that Goldengo's had better places, but I think that if you're going to be playing like a rogue deck, I think Goldengo's a good one to play, because like a deck like Miraidon, to me, I'm like, you're probably not going to do well. But Goldengo's one of those decks that like you can just get everything and win. Like I played Goldengo in Orlando and they beat me one game, and like I was playing Lost on Bold, obviously, and I took a tie to the Goldengo player, but like they literally just had everything. There's nothing you can do when Goldengo gets everything. I Roxanned them into superior energy retrieval, and there was one in deck, and I shuffled like an 18 card deck, and they Roxanned into it, and they coin bonused for 2 to draw the last like 2 cards that they needed, and I was like, wow, I just lose. And sometimes that's just Goldengo. Right. Definitely very hot and cold deck, but I think personally, if you're going to be playing a deck that's like, I'm just trying to draw cards and swing a lot of damage. Chen-Pao's probably better. But yeah, I think Goldengo, it's all right. Played as a rogue deck.
Cool. And I think that a lot of people might be going in with the mindset that they are going to play rogue decks, and that's why we bring it up on this meta forecast, because again, like we already mentioned here, that this is one of the last tournaments, you know, going into a new format starting at NAIC. So people want to take those decks out of their binder and play them a little bit more. Now, we're going to be talking about the other deck here with Alex that plays Prime Catcher Greninja Canceling Cologne, and that's going to be Chen-Pao. So going over to you, Alex, kind of pivoting on where these water-based decks are. With Chen-Pao, we've seen a lot of people pilot it that are good at the deck. We know that there's the CEOs of POW, right? And we haven't really seen it win a tournament yet. Do you think that now, with maybe a little bit more intel of what the Charizard lists are going to look like, do you think that this is a world that maybe Chen-Pao might be able to turn it around and take home a tournament win?
I think it's definitely possible. I think it really depends on who you have playing Chen-Pao. It's definitely a deck that could win, but especially if lists focus more on like the Torrid list with no Max Belt or no Devo TM, I think Chen-Pao is in a much better spot. But if lists like go towards the Australian list for Charizard, I don't think Chen-Pao is ever like winning an event. If like he's not dodging that many airy Charizards, if that's the popular variant. But it definitely has the power, and it has enough good players playing it for it to have a run. Like Reagan probably had a decent shot of winning in Orlando. So I would expect it to have another decent showing. Maybe not a win, but it might appear in top 8.
Got it. Yeah, and I think that, you know, seeing the middle backs come in a couple of lists with the new technology, it makes me do exactly what Dom's doing right now, shake my head a little bit. I don't believe in it, but I see that that's like the counter to the counter of the counter. And that's kind of where my head's at with Chen-Pao. You know what, Dom, we're going to go back to you just a little bit here. I want you to talk to me. You've played quite a few different water decks and decks that can spread. We talked about Rapid Strike. I feel like this deck almost is starting to feel like Rapid Strike in its prime, where it has the combos to pull off, but it doesn't always get the combos, and it's got that, you know, a couple glaring bad matchups, polarizing matchups in the format. So would you agree or disagree with that type of statement?
I mean, I'm definitely saying that it's similar to Rapid Strike in the fact that you either have it or you don't. Especially against a deck like Charizard, you either win that game because you have it, or you lose that game because you're one card short. And it's definitely one of those decks that, like, you either need to have every single combo piece, you need that Prime Catcher Cologne 3 energies, or you're just losing sometimes. And like, definitely it's a very high rolly deck, I find. I think under a good pilot, it's definitely better than like under a mediocre pilot. I think that like people like Jared Grimes, I think like guys played enough Chen-Pao now that he probably knows most of his lines. Like I think if you're just picking up Chen-Pao, yeah, bro, like
read the flavor text while he sleeps.
Oh yeah, but I think if you're just picking up Chen-Pao and you're like, maybe I'm gonna do good, it's probably not the best, because like even when you're bricking, you've got to know your sequences, right? And I think it's definitely one of those decks you have to know, which is, like you said, similar to Rapid Strike, in a deck that like, if you don't know your lines into this matchup, if they play this card or this card, it can get really sticky. And I think that, like Alex was talking about, if a card like a Ares in format and is popular, Chen-Pao's probably not having a great day.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, going back to you, Lyric, I want to talk to you a little bit more about this, because you play the other deck that does the thing. Why would you choose Chen-Pao over Goldengo, or Goldengo over Chen-Pao?
So I played Chen-Pao, right when it came out, right when it was playing more Lost City and a little bit more Skaters Park. And we didn't really use like the Pokestop. There was a wishy-washy in there. There was like some cute tech cards. I love Chen-Pao. I think while yes, like you technically draw more with Goldengo, right? Like those coin bonuses are great. I think the barrel is such a reliable kind of engine. If you're able to set up two, you are kind of that weirdly Iono proof, you're that Roxanne proof. And I really just enjoy still Chen-Pao, but as we kind of discussed, one airy hits the field, and if you're playing three rare candies and no middle backs, you're kind of just a sitting duck at that point. Like Scoop go next. And I think a lot of decks are now playing airy, just for just the sake of one Zard, and we haven't even talked about Big Boss Zard. But Eri okay, I'm not gonna lie. Last week at a challenge, I put Eri in Miraidon because why not? And I got paired against the junior, and I had to be that person that Eri the junior playing Chen-Pao going second turn one, and I got that superior and I got that rare candy, and it came down to getting that superior for the win at the end of the game. Like it. Yeah. Is very susceptible, but I just love the barrel a little bit more, and Chen-Pao being able to swing for as much, and the fact that Chen-Pao uses Shivery Chill and gets that water out of the deck more reliably than something like Earthen Vessel. It's a better Goldengo in my opinion. But I mean, once again, very airy susceptible.
Yep. Well, you heard it here first, kids. Eerie killing children's dreams one turn at a time. But we're gonna hop back over. I want to talk to you, Alex, a little bit more about a dream killer of sorts in Giratina. And now I know that you've played some comfy decks in your time. You're not really into flower selecting as much as you used to be, but Giratina seems like it's a very good play as of late, and it does have a decent Charizard matchup. So tell me what your thoughts on Giratina overall as a deck right now.
So yeah, obviously Giratina is a good play. There's no denying that. And there's a reason a lot of top player groups have been playing Giratina. Mm-hmm. I don't know if it has it in it to win an event right now.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's enough matchups like Chen-Pao that are just kind of bad enough that you don't have enough good players having good runs. Like we've seen plenty of success, just no wins. And I think into this meta specifically, with Ancient Box on the rise, Chen-Pao probably on the rise, I don't really see Giratina as the best play. Like it's a good play. It just doesn't necessarily beat the counter, like the rest of the meta. Like it might beat Zard. Maybe you have that mythical 12 Zard run. You beat them all. Cool. But that's so unlikely.
Right.
I don't know, it lost something with Path and never really got it back.
Yeah, I can feel that. And there's been a couple of sprinklings of different stadiums in here. We see the Sinnoh, we see, the Artisan to help set up a little bit easier. I've seen third boss in the deck, which is kind of wild. Just little things like that. The Iono is coming back to make up for that spot for Path. So I definitely can see where, they're just trying to make up for that lost space, because once you hit Charizard, I feel like Charizard's a 50-50. It used to feel more like 65, 35. Most of the time is a Tina player for the majority of the first half of the format. I felt pretty good into Charizard with Path in my deck. I felt pretty good also with Spiritomb in my deck. But now those things shouldn't be played, I don't think. Maybe Spiritomb every once in a while, but it's meta dependent. I don't think that we need it right now. But yeah, I mean, I would definitely agree with that take, that Tina doesn't have it to win, but it is a super strong play still. So you could definitely, it's a day 2 deck, as I would label it. So you could definitely day 2, but will it win? Maybe not. Now, kicking it back to you, Lyric, let's talk about a different Giratina deck, which I do think is actually pretty strong. It might not be the more powerful Tina deck, but Arc Tina. We see Arc Tina starting to come back, and that seems to have a pretty decent Charizard matchup with the Max Belt in there. Iron Lease is a little bit more effective. It's got a really good matchup into the things trying to counter Charizard. So what are your thoughts on Arc Tina?
Well, I started playing an Arc pile like 2 years ago when I, went on Limitless, and I was like, best Pokemon decks to play. I played a little Arc pile called Arc Intel. I had no idea what I was doing. But I have a soft spot for Arceus because I think just Starbirth as a V-Star power is amazing. You're able to just go get whatever you want out of the deck, whatever you need. I think Arctina, it swings big. It has big attackers. If you're able to, set up your Bibarel Squovit, you are constantly cycling through that deck, and it feels great when it fires. But then when it doesn't fire, like we saw, unfortunately, with J-Jewel at Orlando, where J-Jewel had 4 energy in hand and nothing else to do, it is a whole pile of bricks, and it feels really bad. Yep. But I think the bulky mon, as I like to call it, right, those 280, big boy, big attackers, definitely feel a lot better going into this meta, going into this big regional than some of these like smaller baby Pokemon, because they really, some of them just don't have a chance. Like, you take first knockout on Charizard, you're like, all right, I'm up, and then Charizard, boom, gets stronger, hits for that 210. You got Max Belt, you got Choice Belt. They're playing so many techs now that nothing really feels comfortable. But if anything is going to feel a little bit better, I would say Arctina definitely feels a little bit better.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that Arctina has come to the point where the consistency level has gone up enough, and it has enough good, like I said, polarizing matchups that you can just slam into something enough times. The max belt technology on the Charizard side has gone down in lieu of Prime Catcher, and even Hero's Cape, I think this is more played tech. So those Charizard matchups are a little less scary. For sure. So moving on to you, Dom, we obviously have the 2 different schools of Tina. Which one are you picking and why, if you're going into indie regionals?
I mean, like, for me, I'm a big Lost Tina guy. I played Lost Tina. Did some success last quarter. I played, I think I top got 3 cups with it.
Yep.
It felt pretty good. Like, losing Path still hurts, but your Charizard matchup, I'd say if I was going, I have to play in a best of 9 set against Charizard, I'm probably taking Lost Tina in the current format, right? Like, the deck's just a little more consistent, I think, than some of the other decks we've got in the format. Like, Chen-Pao, I feel like is kind of like, yeah, I'm probably going to brick at least 4 games out of these 9. So, like, I think that Lost Tina is probably better. I think Arctina is a lot easier to pilot, and especially, like, if you're playing Lost Tina and you get hit with like Airy and you lose a Mirage Gate, I think you're just probably losing that match to Charizard, because you need your Mirage Gates, right? You need to be swinging. I think being able to utilize cards like Cramorant are really strong. Obviously, we know Sableye is really strong, and especially with lists cutting down their Jirachis, I think cards like Sableye are definitely a little bit slept on. I know some people are even throwing on like 2 into their list. But I still think that Arctina is an excellent play, and I definitely think that I could see it. I could see either making top cut at a regional. Are they winning? Probably not. But like I talked about in our most recent video, you're either playing a deck that is Charizard, or you're playing a deck that beats Charizard. And like the 3 decks we've talked about so far, Arctina, Lost Tina, and Chen-Pao, they all beat Charizard as much as you can beat Charizard, right? Like, there's only so much you can do.
It takes
so I think that, like,
more favored matchup, a more...
Yeah, more favored. That's not a 70-30.
Right.
But yeah, like, I think under a good pilot, I think both decks are very strong.
Awesome. So if you're playing any one of those decks or considering playing those decks, just make sure that you know your lines, you know your gameplay. We're going to hop over to a good question. We're going to go round table with this one. So we'll start it back off with you, Lyric, here. What decks are actually beating Charizard right now? It's just name any decks that you know for sure that you think will actually beat Charizard. I'm going to make you make your prediction, and we'll go round table through everybody.
Well, I have a bit on my stream called I Hate Charizard, and it's the anti-Zard zone that we call it whenever I get so frustrated playing against Charizard. What beats Charizard? That's a great question. Yep. Cards beat Charizard. I mean, like,
cards.
Yes. TM Devo. I think I mean, a good Misfortune Sisters onto a Charizard, whew, like, you got that game. You know what I mean? Let's see. God. I mean, Chen-Pao in theory, right, is supposed to be able to swing for these large numbers every single time. You started with me on this one, which is like the worst. You should start with the guy who won an IC. Because I'm still trying to figure out how to beat Charizard, to be quite honest. Because my deck, none of my decks do. Maybe Arc Rouge with Armor Rouge EX. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, next person for that one.
Cool. We'll hop backwards. We'll go to you, Dom. Dom, what beats Charizard right now in this meta?
I mean, like, in theory, the 3 decks we just talked about beat Charizard, but like you were talking about, I don't actually think any of the matchups are as good as people make them out to be, right? Like, I don't know, I've seen Arctinas go 0-3 against Charizards in regionals, and I'm like, yeah, guys, you're playing this deck just to beat Charizard, and you're losing to Charizard, right?
Right.
Likewise with Lost Tina, it's like, you can sometimes just lose. Chen-Pao, I think, is probably the best deck into Charizard, by my experience at least, just being able to go, yeah, I'm going to swing with Radiant Greninja or my C-Pao. They feel okay, but I don't know. I know Raging Bolt beats Charizard pretty handedly. I can say that. I can say Raging Bolt is pretty good, but that deck is not real. If you're watching this, don't listen to my words. Don't play that deck, bro. It's not good.
Well, Alex, I'll have you put your Arctura helmet on here, and we'll talk a little bit about what beats Charizard. So, what, in your opinion, what does actually beat Charizard?
I think that question really depends on the Charizard list, because everything has a chance against different variants of Charizard.
Got it.
I think the biggest quote unquote beat Charizard is definitely Lost Tina, and then probably Stall is the other one. There's no good answer. And then in theory, but not really, Lugia beats Charizard.
Okay.
But Lugia sucks, and don't play. Don't
Thank you.
play that. I think it really comes down to either a weird control deck or Giratina.
Got it. Okay. Well, I like both of those answers. I mean,
the other answer is probably Gardevoir has a favored matchup.
That's also true. So we obviously saw our friend and teammate Josh Frink did pilot the Gardevoir list in Orlando, came in third. I think that definitely hitting a Charizard matchup as the Gardevoir player, you feel great, right? Most of the time, unless you have a bricky hand. But that doesn't happen as much as Lugia has a bricky hand. Both of those decks, I feel like, would be able to go in and have a good time as long as they drew correctly. We were talking a little bit beforehand about Lugia in the next format, in NAIC, being a better deck. But I still think that you get those hands where you're just like, what do I do here? I even play tested with a coaching client the other day, and they were playing an arc pile, and it was a very odd arc pile. And I still took 3 turns to set up a Lugia deck. So that's where, my mindset goes, yeah, when you get everything on the board, it's got a pretty favored matchup into Charizard. But how often in your games are you doing that is the question. So yeah, I would definitely agree with you too, Alex. Lugia, nobody's out here playing the quad Iron Leaf stack. Don't do that to yourselves, please. No Toad Skrulliax, nothing like that, nothing crazy. I would really agree with you, and I know this is a hot take, and not a lot of people want to play this, and not a lot of people want to pilot this style of deck, but Control is also a really, really good play into a meta like this. So if you know how to pilot Control, I think that's solid play into most Charizard lists, because there's so many answers to everything that they have. And I know the Charizard control style, like you were talking about, there's different variants. There's a control style, is seeing a lesser and lesser amount in these bigger major events. So I think that's where my mind's at. So we're gonna get over to an important question, and we'll keep it with you, Alex. We're gonna go top 3 most played decks at this event for Indianapolis. What are your takes on the top 3 decks that we'll see on the graphic for day 1?
Charizard.
All three.
It could be, there could be 2 variants. So Charizard, probably Chen-Pao. That might be third. I don't know where it is. And then the other deck is probably just like either combination of Roaring Moon variants, because they'll probably combine those. And if they don't combine those, they won't be. But the other one is probably just Giratina.
Got it.
Like if they combine, it's Roaring Moon. If not, it's Tina.
Got it. Okay, cool. We'll go to you, Dom. Dom, what do you think the top 3 decks are going to be played at this Indy Regionals Day 1?
I mean, definitely a Charizard. I think you could probably split up like the Zard. I think you could split up the Zard variants into Zard with Bobarrel and Pidgeot as its own thing, Zard Pidgeot as its own thing, Zard Double Turo as its own thing, Zard Single Turo as its own thing, and it'll probably be the top 4. Right. But I think it's definitely Charizard. I think it's tough. I do think if they do put both Moons together, I think it's definitely Moon. I think Chen-Pao will probably be number 2 again. I believe it was number 2 over in Orlando, but I think Chen-Pao will probably stay number 2, and then it'll either be like Roaring Moon variants if they're together, like Alex said, or could very well just be Lost Tina, or just like a Lost Box deck. I feel like Lost Box is very slept on right now, but I don't know if it'll be up there.
Okay, very cool. Lyric, what are your thoughts? Top 3?
Zard, Ancient, like everybody else is saying, combination. And then Giratina, but I think Guardy is like slept on right now, and I think some people might try and make it work.
Okay.
Like Josh has had great results with it. I think a lot of people locally are still trying to figure it out. So you can't just... Zard is going to be number 1 no matter which way you look at it. I think it's one of the best decks to kind of, to be quite honest, learn on. Like the early game is like very simple, but then like to master Charizard takes a little bit. So I think Zard is just a great deck, and doesn't really lose to anything aside from its self-bricking or a really well-placed Misfortune Sisters. So I feel about that one.
Okay, very cool. I love those takes. Now we're going to get to the hottest takes of the Meta Forecast. My favorite part, the rogue decks that we want to do good. We don't know if they're going to do good, but we really wish that we see them in the top 8. I know Dom is rubbing his hands together. Let's hit it off with a bang here, Dom. What do you think the rogue deck of the Indy Regionals is going to be?
Okay, so this is a deck that I made like a month ago, maybe a month and a half ago now, that I was like, I think this deck could be good. And I actually really think Arceus Control could make that one rogue run that is just crazy. Like, I think Arceus Luxray, I've been screwing around with different Luxray controls. I made Raging Bolt control with Zach today. We got a little bored. But I think just Arceus in general is a really great card. And when you mix it with that control variant of Luxray, I think it can be really strong. And I actually could see the deck making a really deep run. And as much as it pains me to not say Raging Bolt, I don't see it making a deep run. I don't see Meowscarada making a deep run. Don't see Goldengo doing it. But I actually could see a deck like Arceus Control just being that one miracle. Yep, it just hit every matchup it needed to, and it just got it done.
Got it. Okay, so as far as that goes, Alex, let's kick it back over to you. What is a rogue deck you would love to see do well at Indy Regionals?
No. I was actually going to say Arceus Control, so I'm going to switch that. Probably I don't know, Dialga or Espathra.
Okay. I was going to say both of those.
Yeah, damn, I'm getting cooked.
I think Dialga has a decent shot of if we look at Drew his results over the last 2 events of this format. He definitely was very close to doing well. I think top 8. So I think if he sticks to it and finds potentially a little better list, that is an easy top 8 run for him potentially. Hits the right matchups, he just hits it. I think most other players probably won't be able to pull that off at this point. They're not as invested in Dialga,
right? But
we'll see. Yeah,
cool. Definitely some decks I would love to see. So, Lyric, what decks would you like to see? I know you didn't talk about Espathra as much, Alex, so maybe, Lyric, you can elaborate on Espathra a little bit more.
Yeah, so we call it funny bird in my sector of the word, because it's certainly a funny bird. I think if it's funny because we're oh boy, let's find a good grass deck to really kind of like just blow out all the Zards. And I knew a couple of Espathras that did make day 2. Like shout out to Mitt. I know she put a ton of time into her list and tons of time into it. Period. I think it is such a kind of weird deck. Pokemon's growing a lot, right? Pokemon has grown a lot over the past couple months, and especially over the past year. And I think if you're like, haha, let me go to my first regional, I've gone to a couple locals, and then you hit the one person who has grinded Espathra for like 2 months, really prepped to play it, you're not going to win. So I really want to see Espathra do well. I mean, combined with Espathra EX's ability, and the Pokemon League headquarters, like decks like Turbo Hands just fall apart. And I feel like Turbo Hands kind of had its time where it was kind of good, but now, that has also fallen apart. I'm also very big on the Dialga train, because I think with a good player piloting that deck and saying, you know what, this is how much energy I have on the board, this is how much energy I'm drawing off of each Metal Maker. If you're really paying attention, it takes very precise sequencing, but you can really make that deck work. But sometimes it is kind of mid, and sometimes it doesn't do what you want it to do. But Espathra, Dialga, and you know what, Goldengo, I'll see y'all in day 2, I hope, this time with it. But it is a rogue deck, but I would love to see it do well again. There were 5 of them in Orlando day 2. That's all I'm saying. So
yeah, there you go.
Maybe a better matchup for Indy.
Awesome. And I'm going to kick it off to my hottest of takes here. We already talked about control a little bit, but there is a different variant of alternative win conditions that I haven't seen do well, and I really do think that it has some time to shine, and that is Great Tusk Mill. And I think Great Tusk Mill could do some funny things based on what I've seen in the meta. It takes a terrible Iron Hands matchup, and it takes a terrible Lost Tina matchup. However, other than that, you're pretty solid into most things. Most people don't know how to pivot around a Great Tusk Mill, so I think that it would be very cool and very fun to see one at least day 2, if not top 8. But will it happen? Maybe not. I don't think enough pilots are going to go to Indy and just chalk up the $70 entry fee loss to play Great Tusk Mill. But if you do, props to you, and I give my shout out to you for this one. One, I do have some faith in somebody piloting. Well, we talked about a Espathra that does have the Banette package. We talked about some of the Giratina lists. They do also have the Banette package. I think that Banette EX as its own potential deck might have some legs to stand on, and the reason being is that if you pay attention to anything online for the online limitless tournaments, there was recently a deck that throughout the course of the weekend and /week leading up into Indy Regionals went 12-0 with the same pilot and the same list for Banette EX. So it's definitely something to not sleep on and look a little bit more into, learn the lines of, and I would love to see a deck like that come out of nowhere and just start swinging. So as far as that goes, that's my hot take, my rogue deck here. That's going to wrap up our meta forecast for Indy Regionals. So I hope that everybody watching this did get a little something out of it, made you feel a little bit more confident in your choice going into this Regionals. If you're going to play Charizard, props to you for playing Charizard, one of the best decks in the format, if not the best deck in the format right now. But if you chose any of these other decks that we talked about, again, maybe some of these thoughts resonated with you to help you out with your list. So I'm going to kick it back off to everybody here that helped me out with the meta forecast so they can tell you where to find them on the interwebs and also any shout outs they'd like to give. So we'll kick it back over to you, Lyric, and let you fly here.
Hi, you guys still don't know me after all this time. I'm kidding. I'm relatively new. You guys can follow me on all platforms. Lyric of Wisdom, like the Zelda song, not the Sonic game. Like I said earlier in the beginning of the podcast, I stream every single day, Monday through Friday, 11, sometimes honestly even earlier, 10:30 a.m. Start your day with me. I am great to have on while you're working. We have a good time on my channel, and that's what we're trying to do, is just growing content. But yeah, shout outs to the Shuffle Squad, shout outs to my local community, and shout outs to me for top cutting a cup for the first time. Top cutting into top 4, by the way. So yeah, day 2ing soon, coming soon. But yeah, shout outs to all that. And Goldengo. I love Goldengo.
There you
Period.
Go. All right. What are your tags so people can find you online, and shout outs you'd like to give here?
Righty, so my Twitter is a Tempo PTCG, and my YouTube is Tempo TCG. Don't really got many shout outs, but shout out Raging Bull, shout out Tom Day, and shout out Candace, the real MVP of Pokemon.
Solid shoutouts. We'll kick it back over to you, Alex. Where can people find you, and any shoutouts you'd like to give?
Yeah, I mean, you can find me at A Schemanske on Twitter. I run an article website with some of the best players in the game writing for me right now, at Schemanske's Corner. It's a Substack. You can find it by Googling the word Schemanske. Apparently, it's very easy.
The keywords.
The keywords, right? And then, yeah, I mean, shout out to all the friends I have. Yay, Josh. Good top 4.
Awesome.
Will confirm it is easy to find. I just looked up Schemanske,
It's
and
so easy to
it was
find.
the second
It's so
thing that
weird.
popped up. So shout out that.
Awesome.
It's so weird.
Well, thank you all again for joining me here on this meta forecast for the Shuffle Squad. If you'd like to support the Shuffle Squad in any way, shape, or form, make sure you're checking out all the links down below in the description of this video so you can find out where to support us. Check out our brand new website at theshufflesquad.com, where you can check out all of our awesome coaches that are on the team, our members, our articles are featured there, as well as on our Patreon. And you can also buy some awesome merch from us too. You can check out our affiliate links in that description as well, so you can save money on awesome Pokemon product to save you money on the game that we all love here. And we will catch you next time on the Shuffle Squad.
Want to support the Shuffle Squad? Be sure to check out all of our sponsors in the description to pick up Pokemon TCG singles, sealed, and PTCG live codes. You made it to the end. Thank you so much for watching this entire video from the Shuffle Squad. Honestly, from the bottom of our hearts, we appreciate each and every person that supports our content, watches what we have going on every single day, every single week, even from time to time, and continuously allows us to have a forum to project our creative content towards the Pokemon TCG community. So if you haven't already, be sure to give this video a like, subscribe to the channel, and even leave a comment to help boost the YouTube algorithm. That being said, we'll catch you with our next video. Thanks again. Take it easy.